I think one of the most incredible things is that God designed people to be people of story. It's why Jesus uses parables in so many of the ways that he teaches and helps to disciple others. And I think it's one of the reasons why we see scriptures that say things like, we will know by the word of their testimony. And today I want to introduce you to an incredible leader, Rob Streetman. Rob leads a ministry and an organization called Inlight Consulting. He's been walking alongside leaders for decades at this point. But one of the beautiful things about Rob is his incredible story. On today's episode, we're going to look at how in the life of a leader, there's going to be a moment of clear lordship. There's going to be a moment where we step into intentional discipleship and a moment where God moves us into a role of leadership in the lives of others. I think Rob's story will encourage you, challenge you, and show you a bit more of how God wants to work and move in your own life. Excited to be joined by Rob Streetman today. Well, Rob, I love getting a chance to sit down with you, man. We get to grab coffee and talk. I was trying to think, man. It's every 2-3 months we'll get a chance to sit down and catch up, and I always am so encouraged by it. I love to hear what God's showing you and teaching you to understand your heart for the church, for Christian leaders, for the marketplace. Those are near and dear to my heart. I love serving Christian leaders, and I'm just so thankful to be here with you, man. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for letting me be here.
Absolutely. Well,
Looking
Rob,
forward to it.
I've known you for a little while now. We were discussing even off camera. I think it was Billy that helped to connect us, and we found each other even on LinkedIn. I think for a little bit there, but tell everybody here that's joining us, what's some of your background? How did you come to faith? What's your context for Christian leadership, and what's some of the stuff that God's got you in at the moment?
Okay. All right. So I came to, I asked the Lord to be my Savior in the Methodist Church when I was 11 or 12. It was Savior, but not Lord. So that created some conflict, some challenges.
Yeah.
I tried to figure out how to be Lord and let Him be Savior for a while, but in my mid-20s, just kind of got tired of trying to do it myself, run my life, and fortunately had a very strong Christian family. And one day I was standing in my mom and dad's living room. The Lord said, why don't you try this thing that's closest, to you? And it was an invitation, but there was also a little bit of a warning in it, like things are going to get worse if you don't. So I did, and just surrendered. Like I said, in my mid-20s.
Okay.
And by that time, I was married. Let's see, that would have been married 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Already in corporate America that long. Apprenticed into the IT industry with a company called Total Systems in Columbus, Georgia.
Okay.
They are the largest credit card processor in the world.
No kidding.
Yeah. At the time that I got involved, they were just beginning.
Wow.
So that was interesting, you know, and still, early in the computer age.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Man, I bet there were some wild moments. I mean, that's startup to major corporation.
Yeah.
And it's in the midst of that the Lord's saying, "Hey, I'm not just your Savior. I've got to be your Lord."
Yeah.
That's a lot to juggle at once.
Well, yeah, and I guess I need to tell more of the story. So when I was at Total Systems, it was wild because everybody entertained, and I got caught up in that.
Gotcha.
So that was part of my wandering from the Lord and coming to the end of myself. And he was kind enough he offered me a job with Sunbank of Florida.
Okay.
That I couldn't turn down. It was like a 60-something% increase in salary, and it was just to get me out of that environment.
Yeah,
and then down in Orlando, he used a book. What's the name of that book? More Than a Carpenter. You may have heard of that book.
Yeah.
Lord Lunatic or Liar.
That's right.
And so that helped my mind kind of settle. It opened my mind up to just think beyond the confusion that I had going on. And then he used the United Methodist hymnal to break my heart.
Wow.
So, it's an orchestration. It was clearly an orchestration. So,
I love hearing that because it also, it I know some of your story here, and it also points to just the impact and the legacy of written thought of
oh yeah,
understanding. Okay, Lord, you're showing us things that are not just for me, but it's for others, and it's for even other generations. Right? We talk about leadership as influence, and the reality is some of the most influential leaders are ones that have already actually passed on,
Right.
but their writings and the things that God has done through them remain. And so, yeah, Lord Lunatic Liar,
Yeah.
More Than a Carpenter, great book. And gosh,
Yeah,
even
I
in this
still give it
room.
away.
Yeah. Do
Yeah, I
you really?
still. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, my
Wow.
my daughter-in-law, her father is getting reinterested. He was
Mm,
raised Catholic. He's
okay.
getting reinterested, and she
Praise the
wanted
Lord.
something
Pass
to give
along.
to him. So
Yeah.
so she and he, hopefully he and my wife Beth and I are both reading through More Than a Carpenter again. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
Man, that's great.
and
Love it.
and you mentioned the writing and the mentorship that we get from that. I mean, like now in my devotion time, I've got 3 different mentors. I've
Mm.
got Oswald Chambers and
Oh,
A.W.
oh yeah,
Tozer and C.S. Lewis
brother.
because they wrote, and
That's wouldn't you love to have sat at a table with all 3 of those guys while
yeah,
they were
well,
alive?
I wouldn't have been able to
Hey man, I
probably.
I would have just sat and listened. Like I don't have
Well,
to say
sure.
anything.
Well, that's right.
Y'all just go ahead and keep on,
Yeah,
talking about what God's saying.
right.
And
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that is, man, that is such a gift in the midst of that process. It's just going, okay, Lord, you're showing us things, and by writing them down, we get to pass them on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're down there in Florida. God's kind of got you in this place. He's kind of pulled you out of something, and he's
Yeah.
stirring something new in you.
Right.
What happens next?
Well, we were in Orlando for 3.5 years.
Mm.
Sunbank and Trust Company of Georgia merged.
Okay.
So most of the IT department in Orlando moved to Atlanta.
Oh.
But again, God orchestrating. We were allowed to stay an extra year because Beth was in school. So they were nice enough to leave us down there for her to get her master's at UCF. And so when we moved to Atlanta, we didn't move into West Cobb or East Cobb like most of the other IT people did.
Mm-hmm.
We were on our own, and so they're showing us how they gave us trips, to come up and find a house, and I
Yeah.
had family that lived out this way.
Mm.
So this was a natural place for me to look. So that's why we moved here. And of course, you look back on those things and you see the orchestration. The man that has mentored me for 25 years. I probably wouldn't have met him if we hadn't been here. And John Brown's had the strongest influence in he's my spiritual father. So he's had the strongest influence. But that's from being out here, and all the experiences are out here. So
I love that, and I love that you just used that phrase, spiritual father. I was talking to a friend of mine over in Egypt, and he was describing some work that he does in a closed country, and they had invited him to come for Christmas. Some of the believers in that persecuted country, they said, "Hey, why don't you come over for Christmas? We'd love to spend some time with you." And he said that exact same phrase. He said, because they really do see me as their spiritual father.
right.
And I think what really pricked my heart was the question: how many believers today couldn't say that they are a spiritual mother or a spiritual father to someone else?
Yeah.
Right. Missing that discipleship opportunity, missing the blessing that comes from mentoring. Right. Because I know this, being mentored is a blessing, and being the mentor is a blessing. Like God has allowed both sides of that equation to be blessed. So I just think to how many individuals in the body of Christ are missing that opportunity and the blessing that comes from it, because God brought you here, but He brought you here with the intention of finding, developing, building different relationships, being a part of a
sure.
bigger kingdom thing that he was working out.
Right.
Okay, so you move up here.
Can I speak? I want,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to
Come on.
speak into
Yeah.
that. So, particularly for the next generation, or for people that don't have a mentor or somebody discipling them, it's. I mean, there's two sides to it, right? There's those that are disciplers, and there's those that want to be discipled. And it wasn't like I had a word from the Lord or anything, but I'm a pretty proactive person, and like most type A's, and so I just got it in my mind, I needed somebody to disciple me,
Mm.
and I didn't wait for John to ask me if he could disciple me. I asked him, and so I think that's something, just a recommendation for everyone is, obviously you need to pray, Lord, show me who is the one, if there's going to be a one, right? And it comes out of a desire, God, I want to grow in my faith. I need somebody to help me. I need somebody to walk through all this with me. And then you just, ask God to tell you who that is, and you're going to have to go ask them, because people don't walk around, thinking I'm going to ask, who can I ask to disciple, unless they are, of course, being led by the Lord too. But
Right.
but John, when I asked him, he took a couple weeks, to pray about, whether or not, and then he asked me a couple of hard questions, and
Do you remember those questions?
well, I remember one of them for sure. Maybe the other one will come to me. He asked me, what is the most difficult sin that I struggle with? And he probably then asked me something. I mean, what I would ask is, what is the desire of your heart? He didn't ask that exact question, but probably something along those lines. Because that's where things start.
Oh yeah, no question. One of the in a similar vein, one of the best questions I'd heard, and I try and use with some of the younger leaders that I walk with, is the question, "What's the one thing you don't want me to ask about?"
Oh yeah, sure.
Right? Like just saying like that
Yeah.
that same kind of idea of, hey, like if we're going to do this, then let's deal with the big issues and not the kind of piddly surface things that we can, present, but are the presenting issue, not the underlying issue.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing that's on my mind to share before I forget it, that was different with John is, I had this assumption that that when I asked John to disciple me, that he was going to be praying for me a lot. And I can't remember how the conversation went, but what I discovered was he was praying more for himself than he was for me. And it's just a good lesson. He was preparing, he was praying to be prepared to speak what God had to say when we got together, rather than praying something, for me.
Yeah.
I think that's just really important for a disciple maker.
That's good. I think that can be an easy thing to miss, right? Where I think fundamentally Christian leaders have to abide in an intimate relationship with God, and if we're not, right, we're gonna have fault, failure, right? Those are debts we're incurring, along the leadership path,
right?
And even in those discipleship relationships, I think acknowledging, wait a second, the goal here is still greater intimacy with God in myself and in them.
Right.
And so that has to be a primary focus, right?
There's a heart-head thing involved too. I've had leadership training and coaching and all of that, and a lot of it, it's out of your head. It's knowing the right questions to ask. It's like, somebody starts talking and you start, kind of looking into your own mind, like, how can I respond? What's the best thing to say? And we really need to be leading with our heart, not with our head, because it's with, our heart that's where faith is and desires are. And if I'm discipling somebody, it's just, we know that it's not what we say, it's the way we live our lives.
Yeah.
So me knowing that John was coming to the meeting himself prepared just said volumes, get your heart right. Is basically what he was saying.
Well, and it's a challenge to equally come prepared and to be a part of that.
Right.
So you just boldly said, "Hey, John, come. Like I want you to do this." John spent some time in prayer, consideration,
Right.
and began that process. Man, that's it's funny how complex we can sometimes make those kinds of things.
Yeah.
When it's just a simple, "Hey, would you be willing to do that?"
Right.
Practically, we're going to sit down and
Yeah.
have breakfast, once a month or something. But you do that.
Yeah.
That kind of consistency
And I'm
bears dividends.
yeah, exactly. I'm sorry. I'm
No, no,
talking
no,
over
no.
you. No, it's part of what was I going to say? Well, I guess what I'm thinking is we've got to get back to the way that the kingdom works,
Mm.
and it works with discipleship. I mean, y'all know that at
Yeah.
ILI. I mean, that's what y'all do, but out there, in the world, even in the church, we've just lost the sense of what discipleship is. We think somebody's
Yeah.
speaking for 30 to 45 minutes, that the congregation's being discipled, and so so we've just got to again, I'm just thinking about the next generation of leaders, and what they're going to need, and what I'm a boomer, so my days are coming to an end soon, and
Not that soon.
well, hopefully not, but in terms of leading,
Yeah.
the next form of church that comes, the next even forms of business, whatever types of business. I mean, we're in a transition. The chaos we're going through, there's something going on, and so the one thing that I have to offer, or that any mature Christian has to offer, is wisdom.
Mm.
And and I just hunger. I would probably overcommit myself if every young Christian would come to me and say, "Would you disciple me?" Because I'd be like, Absolutely. Why not? That's what I got to offer. So it's investing in the kingdom.
Yeah.
And those we know. I'm saying stuff that you and the people probably listening know, but that's the investment. That's not where rust and moths destroy. That's investment, forward.
Yeah.
And there is a return on that. I mean, there truly is in the next age a return on those investments. So, like I said, hopefully I got 30 more years maybe, but you get to a point in your life where earlier rather than later, but you really do start thinking about your investments.
Mm-hmm.
And where am I truly giving my time and attention? So
When do you think, or what do you think really was that triggering point in your own life or experience where you began to see, hey, this discipleship piece is something that um, we've missed, we've lost sight of, or we're in the midst of fumbling. When do you think you really started to kind of see that, and what do you think are some of the remedies in that?
well, I hate to say this, but it came on slowly. I mean, it just kind of grew on me.
Sure.
And probably just being around John,
Mm-hmm.
and hearing John teach, and he probably shared something about discipling, because that's been his bent ever since I've known him, is putting his finger on what's missing, and like you said, how do we rectify that mistake? But looking back, some moments in time that I can reflect on. One thing that I know now is there were people that were discipling me that I didn't know they were discipling me, and they probably didn't know either, because it's not just 90 minutes, once a week with somebody studying a book or the Bible. I had a time at SunTrust. The Lord was just trying to. I didn't know it at the time, but He was trying to uproot some pride in me. And so many times, we see the Lord's judgment. Sometimes it comes off. We think it's persecution. So I'm at work working at SunTrust and got myself in a tough spot with my boss. Again, that we don't have to tell that part, but that it was mostly my fault. And I got put on probation for sharing my faith at work. So of course I jumped to persecution. I'm being persecuted, and almost immediately the panic attacks started coming because work was my identity. Right, my identity's being threatened. Again, I'm looking. This is hindsight being 2020.
Sure.
And so, this goes on for weeks, and I'm fighting back, and I'm having panic attacks, and I walk down the hall there at SunTrust. We had a Bible study in a corner office, and I walk in, and this gentleman, Bobby Little, a black gentleman that just a kind man, but he asked me how I was doing, and so I took about probably 5 or 10 minutes to tell him how bad things were, and he said, "So you got that pride thing going?" And that just kind of like went right past my head. I mean, what does that have to do? I'm being persecuted, man. That's got nothing to do with it. And then a couple minutes later, Mike Close walks in, and he says, "How's everybody doing?" So I get to share again, and we get to the end of it, and guess what he says? You got that pride thing going. And I was dumbfounded. I mean, I was dumbfounded. Wow. I was just like, that just smacked me in the head. But see, that was, they didn't they weren't formally discipling me. They just had a word from the Lord that didn't have anything to do with what, and it really was a marker. It was a milestone. It was the first uprooting of pride in my life.
Would you say that they had just positioned themselves to know the truth and be able to speak the truth to you?
Oh yeah, exactly like John. I mean, I don't know that but they were strong Christian men that had more maturity than I did, and God gave them eyes to see and something to say. And so, those are the things when you as a leader and with a desire to disciple, those are the moments that you look for, but you can't create those in your head. No. They have to come out of your spirit,
right?
And your spirit, and my experience is, my spirit speaks more to my heart than he does to my head. The Holy Spirit. And because when it gets into my head, it gets distracted and confused, and I just do better when I'm just trying to lead with my heart.
Well, one of the when we teach about just different barriers to an intimate walk with the Lord, one of the elements that we talk about, and it's one of the barriers for me, is information over intimacy, right? Where knowledge about God supersedes knowledge of Him, right? And that was, I mean, it's definitely part of my story, right? I love learning and have a passion and a longing to learn, but it can often be for the sake of learning rather than for the sake of really knowing,
right?
And again, a little bit to that head-heart duality, but I love this, because here are the chapters in the story I'm hearing. There's a moment where you go, okay, you're Lord, and so definitive. I'm going to live in a place where you're Lord. There's a moment where you begin to intentionally seek and receive development in your faith, right? Discipleship's one way that we often refer to that. John Mark Comer uses the phrase apprentice, and I think that's a really good word to describe it, because it's not just like discipleship has really taken on an intellectual connotation, which I think you're speaking to this idea of, no, it's heart, but I would say it's heart and hands, like it's holistic, right? And when we even talk about the Great Commission, right, where we do missions, we're seeking to reach unreached people groups, we're seeking to equip local believers to reach their communities. But it's not just reach them with a singular one moment message. It's to teach them to obey all that Christ commanded, right? Like that's the second element to that call in Matthew and in Acts. And so you have this moment where you say, okay, I see lordship. You have this moment where you're stepping into really the receiving end of that discipleship, right? When did you recognize, hey, it- I want to step in and work with leaders explicitly, intentionally? Like,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
how did you make that transition? I mean, you're there at at the bank, right?
Hmm.
You're doing these different things, but there's some kind of transition that brought you into this space where you're going, wait a second, I'm going to invest in these people in this way because. How did you get there?
So while I was, while I was at SunTrust, I was in management. I was a ladder climber, and
Yeah, yeah.
all that. So I had people under me, and um, I, I just felt a responsibility, to be as much of a Christian as I could at work, And so I had the little sign, and I wore my cross outside my jacket. I mean, outside my shirt, um, and I was just it was an outward kind of a thing,
Hmm. Performative, maybe.
Yeah, it was performative, and
Mm.
it actually was the thing that got me in trouble at work that
Mm.
started the pride thing, which is
Yeah.
interesting. But so there was that, and just as I was progressing at SunTrust, the Lord was doing things, in my life outside of work. I'm just getting more exposed to more of the kingdom.
Mm.
But then there came a time, this was in 2005, we were doing a reduction in force at
Mhm.
SunTrust.
Okay.
And I actually was on the reduction in force team. Um, but I ended up being one of the
Reduced team.
reduced. um, and again, that's just, if we could tell that story. It's a God thing too. It's just orchestration. But so I figured, well, okay, fine. I mean, why would God want me working for a bank anyway? That's money, mammon, all that.
Mm.
So
Mm.
I had in my mind that I was going to go work for Hobby Lobby or Chick-fil-A and
Yeah.
continue being an enterprise architect,
Yeah.
and be good at that, and get to do that in a Christian environment. And God he didn't have that for
Mm.
me. So I went through 11 months of
Wow.
wrestling with God over my career path.
Do you think there's still some identity wrestle in the midst of that?
Well, sure. Well, yeah. I mean, it kind of gets, the thing about our subconscious is, we our carnal mind hides in our subconscious, and
Mm.
and the only way to discover where things are going on is to reach in there and pull things out and deal with them. And some things are deeper than others,
Sure.
and are more subtle. So there probably was some of that, but really, I guess it confounded me that that God would put aside all of that, all my whole career, and all that I knew, and all
Mhm.
that I had done, and um, you know, somehow there was going to be like a starting over.
Mm.
At how I was 45 at
Mm.
the time. So still quite a few years of enterprise architecture ahead of
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Um, so um, so I ended up getting what do you call it, an internship
Okay.
at 45. I got an internship at Chick-fil-A in their marketing area, running projects,
Okay.
because I knew how to run projects.
Sure.
So I'm running projects, assuming that I'm going to be the next enterprise architect at Chick-fil-A.
Of
That was the
course,
open
right? Like,
door.
that's it.
Yeah. So not only did that not happen, but they canceled my little contract that I
Oh.
had with them 2 months early. And so I'm
Wow.
sitting in my chair, kind of like this, and
Okay.
really upset, angry.
Yeah.
I asked God, what in the world do you want me to do?
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
and it wasn't asked not nicely, but he was kind. He said, "So what is the desire of your heart?"
Mm.
And so I did my head down like this, and my heart said, "Help Christian leaders find joyful, spirit-filled ministry."
Mm.
That's a quote. I mean, my heart, I, if your heart speaks, that's what my heart said.
There you go.
And at the time, so I was broken. I mean, I was. I mean, he might as well just touched my hip. I mean, it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
Jacob thing. I was just done.
Yeah.
And so I figured, because I'd been on boards of parachurch ministries and done all that stuff, working with pastors. I just assumed that's what it was. I was just going to go work with pastors or elders or
Sure.
whatever.
Sure.
And he just orchestrated things, where I eventually discovered it was Christian leaders in the workplace.
Yeah.
And again, another it's just a long story, but met Oz Hillman, and I don't know if your leaders probably don't know him, but he's kind of like a godfather of marketplace ministry, at least this last round of it,
Sure,
in the
right.
United States. And he had a conference. Lance Wallnau was there. There was a thing that happened at the conference. Lance Wallnau was talking about transformation. And I had been doing transformation work at SunTrust, working with business units, helping them to transform using technology. That's one of the things I did as an enterprise architect. And again, you just see the orchestration there. I was able to connect, what I had learned in change theory in the corporate world with what this guy was talking about. And transformation has been, that's been the thing. The transformation process has been the thing that we use since for 20 years.
Wow.
So that's when it, that's when it, to answer your question, that's kind of when it started. It was really a very definitive point in time. Now, since then, no, it's good. For me, there was a time, in the workplace, in the midst of, trying to, have a career, raise a family, and then, be as much of a Christian man at work as I could be. And then there was this moment where it was a complete shift, and it is something that the business leaders that I've worked with, that's one of the things that they struggle with. Am I supposed to give, like Rob, am I supposed to give up my career, and become a minister, or become, my answer is always, unless you're specifically told, unless you get, wrestle with the Lord for 10 or 11 months, and he says,
go do this.
It's just that's not his way. He has positioned leaders in the workplace to represent him and the kingdom, where people spend most of their waking time is spent there. And so there really is, I think, well, no, I guess you couldn't say that. If you're a pastor and you're really being a pastor and you're really discipling 200, 300 people, you're building that kind of a culture, that obviously that is like you're giving your whole life to that.
Oh, yeah.
But the impact that leaders in the workplace, and when I say workplace, I don't just mean like, in the marketplace. I mean like in education and in government, all that. That's what wherever people work. The potential for influence is, well, it's outside the box. And it literally is outside the box, because I'm not in a church in a box of whatever my denomination is or whatever my doctrine is. We at SunTrust, we regularly had Bible studies, and there were people of all sorts, in those Bible studies, and we didn't have any issues at all. The kingdom was in the room, without division.
Well, and that's, for me, when Paul talks about, the eye and the ear, can't say to one another, we don't need you, right?
Yeah.
That's what I think of when I think of that. The body of Christ, it's not who's going to impact more. It's simply, are you being faithful in the place that God has placed you, in the place that he's called you? And I think that's that's one of the things, Rob, that I love about you, is you walk with these leaders, and you really take these elements and you put them together, because you identified, hey, lordship means lordship over all things.
Right.
And so it's not just that you're my ticket out of hell. It's you're the senior partner, you're the owner, you're the master, and I have the freedom of living as your servant, because there's freedom in that. I don't carry the burdens, right? The owner of the business carries more burdens than the employee in the business.
That's right.
And when he's the owner, then as business owners, we can take rest and refuge in that. But you not only identify the lordship, you've got this deep heart for discipleship and apprenticeship, and the way you're merging and melding these things together for leaders is, I think it's mean, well, it resonates a lot in my heart, man, because
Sure.
that's certainly what God has called me to do. But I think it carries a long-term impact. So here's a question I have for you. For that person that's a believer in the workplace, that believer in the marketplace, um, I have, maybe you haven't, or maybe you could correct me. I have often heard from them that they are sometimes missing those examples of what does it look like for me to disciple in this context? What does it look like for me to lead well in this context? What does it look like for me to make other leaders in this context? Right? That can be a struggle, right?
Sure.
Yes, it's good to have those kinds of Bible studies, but I also know, look, I can put a Jesus fish, an ichthus on the outside of my building, treat my employees terribly, give them terrible pay and benefits, and be like, oh well, and suddenly undermine all of that.
Right.
Hey, leaders, I want to thank you so much for joining us in today's conversation. The life of a faithful Christian leader is going to be one that identifies his lordship, lives in a life of discipleship, and recognizes that leading others is going to be a process of personal transformation, but also the value and importance of remembering that platitudes and these old sayings we've heard for so many years aren't absent of value just because they're familiar, but they actually carry lasting truth. Listen, we pray and hope that this serves you well. If it has, please leave a like, subscribe, comment, give us feedback so that we can help bring you the thoughts, the conversations, and the really the transformational stories of what God is doing in the lives of men and women. Thank you so much for being a part of this. You can find more information about the International Leadership Institute at iliteam.org.